Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Monday and happy November. It's time for us to get acquainted with another goddess, and this month we're going to be investigating the goddess Frigga. We're going to go over some basic information about her, delve a little bit into the ongoing discussion of whether or not Frigga and Freya are the same goddess or not, and then we'll go into some symbolism for the goddess Frigga. So let us begin. First off, Frigga is the anglicized version of the name Frigg, and that name means beloved. Now, because to my ears, Frigga sounds a bit prettier than Frigg, I think that's why I tend to call her Frigga. However, I think it also depends on what your native language is, because I've heard people from various Nordic and Scandinavian countries pronounce Frigg, and there's something about the way they pronounce it that actually makes it sound really beautiful. And I cannot for the life of me reproduce that. So I'm going to go with Frigga, but if Frigg rolls off your tongue a little bit more easily, that is equally correct. She is the daughter of Fjorgen, who is a Jotun. She is the wife of Odin. She's the mother of Balder, Hoder, and Hunir. Frigga is the goddess of fertility and marriage, motherhood, love, domestic arts, magic, weather, wisdom, clouds, mist, and fog. In addition to having charge of all of that, because that is quite a bit of responsibility, but she is also the queen of Asgard, the queen of the gods, and in modern practice I've heard many people refer to her as being the All-Mother. Frigga has a magical garment that's very special, that's made of falcon feathers, and she also has a chariot that's pulled by rams and sheep, which makes a really interesting visual. And one of the chief characteristics of Frigga is that she knows the fate of all things, but she only very seldom speaks of them. She almost never interferes, which makes her quite different from the Norns, because the Norns, of course, also know all the fates, but they are actively shaping them. They are actively influencing, making decisions. Frigga is much more so an observer of what's happening, and she's allowing things to unfold in a manner in which I believe that she should. So that's kind of an interesting take on it, because usually the more people know about what's going to happen, the more they interfere and try to influence and try to make this happen or stop that from happening. But Frigga is not. She just lets it be. So, the controversial bit. Are Frigga and Freya the same goddess? The question arises for several reasons. One of them is because both Frigga and Freya, they have many shared personality traits, deeds, certain attributes, including the fact that they were both vulvas, which are Norse witches who practice a form of magic called Sedir. Sedir involves knowing the course of fate and working within that to create change. And weaving is often a symbol of bringing new events into being. And one of the things associated with Frigga is, of course, her spinning and her weaving. Another thing they have in common is that they are both believed to have evolved from a previous Germanic goddess of another era who was called Frigga. So, you start looking at all these things and you do kind of wonder. And I read that in more of the continental Germanic tribes and also in Britain, where you see more of the Germanic Norse influence over there, is that they never really came around to this idea that Frigga and Freya were different people. This seems to be more confined to the more northerly Scandinavian type of areas. So I thought that was also very interesting. Now, the name Freya is actually a title. It means lady rather, not Leia. It's Monday. I can talk, promise. But Freya is also a cognate of the modern German word Frau, and Frau is the equivalent of the English Mrs., whereas Frigga is a proper name. And I was reading that Freya, or Freyja, was a title that was given to aristocratic Norse women, back in the day. So it does seem like this is more so a title, much like, would be, lady of this, countess of that, queen of that. It refers to an office that someone is holding as opposed to their proper name. Now, the meaning of Frigga's name, beloved, does associate her with areas of love and desire, which are exactly the same as Freya's areas of concern. Now, if they are indeed one and the same deity, then the idea of them being two separate beings is a perception. I don't believe that our opinions alter the reality of who and what the gods are. They are bigger than us. They existed before us. They will exist after us. So I don't think that our capacity or lack of capacity to see them for who they really are actually affects anything about them. I don't think that this goddess, physically split in two or anything. But if they are one and the same, then that would also put Freya's role in collecting half of the battlefield dead to her own hole in the afterlife, Folkvanir, that does make a lot more sense. Because Frigga is Odin's wife, and she's queen of the gods, so it would make sense that she would also have a role in where the dead reside. And for some reason, is she simply referred to as Freya in this capacity. It's just she just happened to be referred to by title, and just it makes sense. You have the divine pair. One's taking half the battlefield, the other half is the other. That makes more sense than if Frigga and Freya were separate. And Frigga, being the wife of the king, doesn't have anything to do with the afterlife. But Freya, who was kind of blended in from a previous tribe of gods called the Vanir. It doesn't, something about that just doesn't flow very well for me. And with all things mythological, there's a lot of room for debate. But at the moment, just based on what I've read so far and just where my train of thought is taking me, I do think that the argument leans in favor of Frigga and Freya being the same. But as always, I'm determined to keep an open mind, just because there are reasons why even academics, very serious academics, keep going round and round on this issue. They are far more intimately acquainted with this from an archaeological and a linguistic standpoint than I am. And if they're still going round and round, there's probably a good reason for that. But I can certainly understand, and I certainly have a lot of sympathy for the arguments that, it's the same person, just Freya is a title and Frigga is a name, and it's just kind of used interchangeably. So that is that. Now with symbols. For the goddess Frigga, her sacred places include wetlands, marshes, swamps, ponds, anything that's a damper, more moist area where life can bring forth. This is also very symbolic of the fluid that's within the womb. As you know, one part of the process, the rather messy process of giving birth, is that at some point the woman's water breaks. And, after the water breaks, that's when you're able to bring forth that new life. So I do find it interesting that this goddess who's so tied with the family and the household and just the creation of life, that she's also associated with these very, very wet places. She's also associated with all forms of waterfowl, and this includes herons and cranes and osprey, ducks, swans, and geese. For obvious reasons, she's obviously associated with falcons because of, her falcon cave. She also has a ring of keys, and I believe the general agreement is that there are 12 keys on this ring, and each key is thought to represent one of Frigg's handmaidens. And we'll get into a little bit more of that and whether or not these handmaidens are goddesses in their own right or if they're aspects of Frigga or not. We'll get into that in other videos. She's also associated with the spinning wheel and the spindle. Of course, she is a little bit of a weaver of fate, not usually too direct of an influence, but, she does keep an eye on things. Trees associated with her are birch and linden. Two runes are associated with Frigga, Berkana, which refers to growth, rebirth, and the birch tree, and also Perth, which deals with initiation, hidden matters, secrets. And also I've been reading that Frigga is considered to be the forerunner of fairy godmothers and also Mother Goose. You may have read some of those old fairy tales and fables when you were a kid, but that was a new thing that I learned. I had no idea that Mother Goose was actually, I don't want to say a manifestation of Frigga, but a character that was taken from her legacy. I think that's the way we'll put it. Of course, one of Frigga's symbols is the sky, as well as the full moon and the color silver. So this is just a brief taste to get us a little bit more acquainted with the goddess Frigga. We'll see where this takes us as the month progresses. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't joined the Discord group already, there is a link to do so in the description box below. And if you would like to, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and leave me a comment. That's it for now. I'll see you later.